Okay, I just finished another Paul Anderson book. Well, that's him, I guess. You can look at him while I try and get back to the cover. Kindle likes to let me know that I finished a book and try and get me to leave a star rating on their website. Let's see, the 50th anniversary of the High Crusade. So this was published in 1959, sorry, in analog, as serialized in 4 issues of analog. Uh, Interesting fact, fun fact of the time, it was the first issues that were called analog, and it was the magazine previously called Astounding. So it had both the analog title and the Astounding title on the covers, I'm told. This book has quite a few um, introductions and appreciations and stuff. The Silverberg one talks about how Silverberg happened to be in John Campbell's office, editor of Astounding, and then Analog. When the issue came out, it picked it up, out of curiosity, and Campbell said, "You're definitely going to read that one. You're definitely going to want to read that one because it is one of Poul's best." Poul was at the height of his powers at this time. He actually, over the 12-month period surrounding this, he had a total of 3 novels serialized in analog. That's a huge platform, so he must have been very, very good. The High Crusade is the first science fiction novel I've read by him. I sort of discovered him this year. It's a real privilege at the age of 65 to discover a new to me writer who's got many, 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 many books that I've hardly read. I only read one of his books before. Gotta trim the beard here, buddy. What was I talking about? Oh, the High Crusade. I'd only read one of his science fiction books. I've been reading his fantasy this year. I read the first one I read was The Broken Sword. I guess that was last year. It's based on Norse sagas, Viking sagas, that kind of thing. Fantastic fantasy novel. One of a big influence on Michael Moorcock, according to what he said in many interviews. He finds it himself. He finds it vastly superior to Tolkien. Anyway, I don't know if anyone's going to agree with that, but you definitely should read The Broken Sword if you like high fantasy. It's one book, 350 pages or whatever. This one, The High Crusade, is science fiction. It is short enough, I believe, to count for Shorty September. Once you get past all these, let's see, it's the first 20 pages is all these appreciations. I think this is a copy put out by, yeah, according to this, it would have been, according to these bogus Kindle page numbers, the text of the novel would have been 170 pages. So I'll count it. Not that I'm doing Shorty September, but um, it, like I was saying, I think this edition was put out by, originally, it's on ebook. I don't know who's putting it out now, but this one with this cover, 50th anniversary would have been the book. The book edition was in 1960, so 50 would have been 2010. It's got all these appreciations from Baen book authors and others. His daughter wrote one. There's a couple Baen book authors in here. And if you were to read the premise of this book, the concept of this book, and think, wow, that's very Eric Flint, you would find an ally in Eric Flint who writes one of these introductions and basically owns up to the fact that his whole career is based on this one book. And it is a book about a small barony, I think, in England around 1340, 1375, 1345, somewhere in there. Run by the noble is called Sir. What is his name? I keep forgetting. Sir Roger. He's not the narrator of the book, though. It's got kind of a wraparound narration where a person far in the future is finding this manuscript allegedly written by an abbot, or who is the abbot of the town that is run by Sir Roger, which I don't think has a name. He's a baron. Let's see if it has a name. Okay, so at this time, at the beginning, Sir Roger's gearing up his whole fortune and his whole all the men of his village and all the knights and everything, and outfitting them all to go on crusade. So their plan is to get everybody together, go down, go through France, fight a bunch of people for the fun of it, because they're at war with France apparently, and then go to the what they call the Holy Land, and liberate it from the Muslims and put it under Christian control. So a standard crusade, the book is called the High Crusade, but they don't actually get to that crusade. Instead, they go up. I won't go over the whole plot, but it's such an incredibly fun read. What happens at this time in their history, and it seems very propitious to them, seems like an omen at first, this giant, and I mean giant, spaceship appears in the sky over the village and then lands, and then blue people pop out, and then one of the blue people takes a shot at one of the knights, kills him with his phaser, his laser weapon kind of thing. And then there's a battle which does not really go the way that the blue people, the aliens, thought it was going to go. This is where the book gets really interesting, because it is a different kind of view than the cliche ones of what you think of a alien invasion of a long time ago, where the people, where the humans would be totally overwhelmed and superstitious, and I mean they start out basing everything on of course their own belief system at the time. They see these people that are short, and they have I think they have kind of pointy ears, and they're blue, and they don't speak any language that any of these people have heard before, and they have these fire sticks, ray guns. They naturally assume it's an attack of demons, and that the demons have either been, it's different theories, like they were sent by God to test us to see if we're ready for the crusade, or maybe they're sent by Satan to stop the crusade. Whatever. They start, they interrogate one, and they teach. The abbot is kind of put in charge. Not the abbot. Yeah, I guess he's an abbot or friar. I'm not sure. Of the town, is put in charge of learning the language, or teaching they have a hostage, teaching this this alien to speak Latin. He teaches it Latin. He thinks, I don't know if I want to teach it English. It probably should. If it doesn't speak any human languages, I should probably teach it the most useful one from his point of view. So he starts to teach it Latin. And this where it gets very interesting, because the people at the time, of course, have their own theories about the world. The abbot's very well read, so he knows the Greeks believed the earth was round. He kind of thinks of it as a theory or a fantasy that the Greeks had, because in his mind he's thinking, well, if the earth was round, why doesn't the water all run off? Because you think of a ball, if you're holding a ball in your hands and you pour like a water on it, it wouldn't form an ocean, it would just run off the sides. But that's but he can, at least because of the Greeks, entertain the theory that the earth might be round. And he learns from the alien that this pinpoints in the sky of light are actually just very distant suns, like the sun the earth goes around, and the concept of other planets as bodies that people could land on and walk on and breathe on. So they gradually start to learn, and he looks through he's got some book of demons or something, demonology book or something. He looks through, he can't find anything that these demons, that these aliens fit as any kind of demonology, and they're smart enough to see that that there's machinery and mechanisms inside that can be taken apart and looked at, and over time they start to think like, well, maybe this is, maybe they're telling the truth about this, and but they're intelligent people. Just because it's 1375 doesn't mean they don't have the same brain power that we do, and that's where the book really excels. I think is in two ways talking about the humans of the time. And one, they're humans like us. They can learn things. We learned about cell phones. People who didn't have them growing up learn about it. I mean, it's a bigger learning curve, but they're not just cowed and fearful and superstitious. They have reasoning capabilities, and they use them to learn more about this ship, and and it goes in quite a quite a how do I put this without ruining a lot? The humans get along very far against the aliens. A lot of that's the way Poul Anderson chose to organize. He created the aliens, of course, himself, and he's able to create them in such a way that it's quite plausible, given the limitations of the aliens and versus the limitations of the humans. There's a lot of conflict between the humans, but they have a different worldview, not only than the aliens, but with us. And often I feel like when you read historical fiction, maybe not the best stuff, but it's kind of the standard stuff. Very often, the main characters are very, very modern seeming. I think of the Sharpe novels, Richard Sharpe novels by Bernard Cornwell. Richard Sharpe is the books. They're set in the Napoleonic era, about riflemen, British rifle regiment, and Sharpe goes from private all the way to the rank of I think major or lieutenant colonel, something like that, just below, almost just below general, I think, and which is pretty ridiculous, given the times that somebody would rise from the ranks from an illiterate villager, no education, no background, anything, enlisted man in the army, rise to the ranks. It would be possible now, not quite possible probably to get all that level without any other education, but at that time, army officers were from the aristocracy, from the upper classes, and you became an officer by buying your way in. You paid money, and then you got a rank, which amazing way to do things. Worked out pretty good for the empire for quite a while, though. I guess they had enough competent people to compensate for the incompetent people, and maybe there was mentorship and all these kind of things. But Sharpe is really, as a person, is very modern, very contemporary view of people. He does not suffer fools gladly. He gives respect to people who are worth it, are worthy of it, no matter what their rank or lack of rank, and he will follow orders. He'll follow orders from an officer that he respects, that he thinks is a good tactician and a decent person, but he's not going to follow orders from a fool if he can avoid it. And he took care of a few officers on the side if he felt they were too dangerous and too incompetent at their jobs. And so he's more modern than that. His attitudes towards women are very modern. He treats women like equals, equal to himself and to other men, which maybe not a lot of dudes were doing back then. But the High Crusade by Poul Anderson is not that kind of book. It's about people of the time, sort of like that Robert Edgar's movie that came out a few years ago, the Norseman. People commented a lot at the time is how when you watch these people and how they live their lives and the rituals they involved in and everything, it's clear you're watching people with entirely different belief systems than our own. And it's the same in the High Crusade. I don't know how accurate, but it seems very accurate that these people have a completely different moral code when it comes to their group versus an out group. different tactics they use, different connection, very hierarchical connection, very certain certainty in terms of right and wrong. They don't all agree with each other though, but they do fall in line behind Sir Roger when he tells them what to do, even though they sometimes tells them to do some questionable things or things that they don't think are safe. But he's the Baron, and so they follow him, and they follow him quite far. Uh, so, which makes for fascinating reading, and the science fiction stuff is good too. It is late 50s. It is sort of still coming out of that era of uh, well, we still have that in terms of Star Trek and things where there's planets all over the place, and there's aliens look mostly humanoid, with some differences. Uh, all still very plausible at the time. This other race has a vast empire. There's a couple other minor races that exist in the galaxy that they know of. So, but it's safe to say that the blue people, I can't remember their name, don't know how to pronounce it anyway. Uh, had never met anybody like these medieval Britishmen. Um, so that's the book. Uh, it's called The High Crusade, not because it's high or lofty in goal. It's high meaning they leave the ground, I guess. It's kind of ironic to call it the High Crusade when you go through all the things that happen. I mean, it's very morally ambivalent. I would say a lot of people, not necessarily today, but maybe 5 years ago, it would have offended a lot of younger readers. It could have potentially people who don't like any kind of moral ambiguity, don't like being presented with ideas that we don't hold as being moral or decent today, because it's realistic. It attempts to be realistic within its totally absurd premise, and it's a really delightfully absurd premise that is such fun to read. I really like Poul Anderson now, who, by all accounts, it was a really nice guy. Besides being extremely brilliant in terms of history, Norse mythology, physics, and engineering, many fields, and just passionate about learning. He was a really wonderful guy that had a lot of friends. Was very well liked in the industry, and which is not entirely, it's not universal. Let's say that, in terms of there are many writers who are pricks. But at this time, I sometimes wonder why so many of them were. I think it has something to do with the publishing industry, maybe the way it's set up, and especially then, or I guess even worse now. But well, probably so bad now that's not even worth pursuing. But at the time, you could almost make a decent living. They got paid very low. They had to write very fast. There was a lot of competition, a lot of jealousy, a lot of anger and frustration. A lot of writers got ripped off by agents or publishers for different reasons, and I think it took its toll on people, but not on Poul Anderson, as far as we know. I mean, I even remember a Jack Vance. I'll see if I can find it and link to it. Jack Vance audio interview that he did with a podcast called Starship Sofa, and where he's like he didn't like Poul Anderson's work, but he didn't like anybody's work really, any of his contemporaries. Jack Vance didn't, but he was talking about Poul Anderson. They built a houseboat together once or something. He goes, "He was such a great guy. I really admired him," which is not something you hear Jack Vance say about pretty much anybody. um, it, of his contemporaries. So if even Jack Vance liked him, that's amazing. So sweet guy. It's nice to know a sweet guy wrote a lot of books, and lived a pretty decently long life. And his daughter's still very active in publishing and the community, and I'm just thrilled that I have more books by him to read. Because there's so many of them, and I'm really getting into them right now. And of course, other than And McBain, he's my big favorite discovery that I'm so happy about because there's so many books that I can go to. Um, Long career. Funny enough, what am I at? 20 minutes, that's enough. But I read one of his books when I was young. I really didn't like it very much, called Brainwave. I read it. It was part of a list of something I found somewhere of the books, the classic science fiction you must read. I didn't like it that much. I thought it was kind of elitist. The premise is that people, something happens. I can't remember, so long ago. Either the comet or some some phenomenon happens that raises the intelligence of, I believe, all mammals on Earth or all primates. I'm not really sure. Like a lot. So everybody, the average person's a genius. The geniuses are super geniuses. Dumb people are smart people now. Monkeys and that, or can start figuring out how to use tools. But I felt like it leaned too much on the thought that just raw intelligence, raw reasoning power was what made people good or bad, and I'm not really convinced of that. And I probably unfair to review it after so many years. But I remember one scene really stood up that I didn't like at all. It made me dislike the book, about a guy who's a normal guy who's working a normal job, and after this brain intelligence thing comes up, he's sitting on his step in despair and crying because he realizes how shit his life is, because he's got like a warehouse job or something, or a manufacturing job, and he's aware of how little money he's bringing in and how his family is close to poverty and stuff. And I think, I think your normal guy can figure that out for himself without some, like, let's raise this guy's intelligence so he knows how shitty his life is. I think people know what's going on. I don't think IQ works in that way. And that book was probably pretty old. I, uh, I don't know if they knew about emotional intelligence at that point, or if it was like a field of study, but I didn't like it because it seemed kind of elitist. And then the people on top, I'll spoil the end because I don't care, because I don't like it, decide to leave Earth, because they're going to go explore the galaxy because they're so smart and clever and bestest people ever now. And so they're going to go explore the gallery in these spaceships they built overnight because they're so damn smart. And they're going to leave the Earth to the dumb people, the lower IQ people, and the smarter animals to run. And I just thought it was very condescending. But who knows how old he was when he wrote it? I guess I could look all that up. But, I will apologize to his memory because everything else I've read by him is so fantastic. And the characters are very complex. I was reading or watching something recently where the characters on one side of the conflict had zero interpersonal conflicts, which seems a very old-fashioned way to write. Can't remember what it was, though. It wasn't. And Poe definitely shows his characters in conflict with their allies and their enemies, and a terrific guy. I'm going to read another one tonight. I'm going to start it tonight. Hopefully I'll have a review of it tomorrow. Or maybe I'll read one of the shorties. I got some suggestions. I pulled some stuff off Steve Donahue did a bunch of shorties, and three of them he talked up so well that I really got to read those if I have time. And Skullface, maybe I'll read that tonight. One of these things, and we'll do another review tomorrow. Okay, that's it. Take care.